Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Orphic Astrology channel. My name is Natalya Alas, and I am an artist and sound sculptor, somatic body worker, diviner, and professional astromancer, specializing in Hellenistic through medieval traditional techniques. Today, I am welcoming a brilliant and lovely friend and colleague to join me in discussing the upcoming new moon in Libra. This will be a beginning of a Lunations series in collaboration with astrologers who have their natal moon in the sign of the lunation we'll be discussing. So I'm excited to be initiating the series with Antoinette MacKenzie of Pomegranate Astrology. Antoinette MacKenzie is a mythopoetic astrologer and mage specializing in Hellenistic techniques with extensive practice. She is based in Melbourne, Australia, and offers readings in person or online through her website at pomegranateastrology.com. She can also be found on Substack. Both will be linked in the video description below. So Antoinette was born with the balsamic moon in Libra. So I thought, who better to talk with about this upcoming lunation than with her? Welcome, and thank you for joining me. I'm so honored to have you as my guest.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really lovely to be here, and I'm really looking forward to chatting about this particular lunation in Libra.
I'm so happy to have you here. You're one of the first people I met online when I was first putting myself out there on Instagram in 2021, 2022. So I'm excited to be collaborating with you today, especially as devotees of Persephone and Hekate. So let's get into the chart. This new moon in Libra is taking place on Tuesday, October 21st at 12:25 p.m. Universal Time or 1:25 p.m. in West Africa / Central European Time in my time zone, and 11:25 p.m. in Australian Eastern Time in your location down in Oz. The new moon goes exact at 28 degrees Libra in the final decan and final term of Libra. The final decan of Libra is ruled by Jupiter, while the final term is governed by Mars. It is taking place in the 14th lunar station, or Chitra Nakshatra, which is anchored to the star Spica at 24 degrees tropical Libra. And this also corresponds with the sidereal mantle of Alcimac and the Chinese lunar lodge of Jiao Shu. All three of these lunar stations are anchored to Spica. So Luna is separating from Spica, but still very close by. And the orb for the brightest magnitude stars is actually 7 degrees. So this lunation lands well within that range. Spica is actually positioned right on the ecliptic, so the luminaries tend to occult the star when they pass here. And the sun recently made a conjunction with Spica in the days leading up to the new moon. What this also means is that Spica is now finishing its period of invisibility or its lying hidden phase and will begin to make its first visibility a little over a week following the new moon. And I think this is important because whenever a lunation aligns with a fixed star, it brings forth that star's influences. And in this case of a new moon conjoining a fixed star, it will represent the seeding of its significations, which will often come to light or bear fruit as the moon proceeds to gain in light through the new lunar cycle. So Spica is associated with Persephone and innocence and purity. It's considered to bestow success, renown, and riches, and a sweet disposition, the love of art and science when it's well aspected, but also unscrupulousness, unfruitfulness, and injustice to the innocent when maltreated. But if rising or culminating, meaning when she makes her heliacal rise or when she is culminating on the midheaven at midnight, Spica grants unbounded good fortune, riches, happiness, unexpected honor, or unexpected advancement beyond our hopes or capacities. And Spica is one of the most auspicious of the Behenian fixed stars. So Spica talismans were prescribed for procuring prosperity and good fortune by dispelling scarcity and mischief, for the casting away of evil and anguish, and for victory in lawsuits and overcoming contentions. Spica in the Indic tradition is known as Chitra, the star of opportunity, and is also associated with creativity, craftsmanship, luxury, and wealth. Chitra is considered to have a soft temperament, favorable for friendship, marital love, purchasing and making of clothes, art, and music, and performing auspicious deeds when the moon is here. In the Chinese lunar calendar, Jiao Shu commences the quadrant of the azure dragon of the east and is associated with glory and prosperity, as well as rains and floods. And in the Perso-Arabic tradition, Spica is known as Al-Simak, the unarmed one, referring to the stellar influences here around purity and innocence, with Arcturus nearby acting as protector. But this is the 14th lunar station, so it also represents the culmination of the midway point in the lunar calendar, which brings significations around severing and ending of futile endeavors. So the 14th lunar station was considered a place favorable for love, but it could be worked with to cause conflict and separation as well. It's also a good time for healing modalities, taking medicines, or implementing restorative practices. And looking at this lunation with Chiron in opposition, forming a cardinal T-square with Jupiter, though technically separating from them, it brings to mind collective or personal wounds that need to be addressed in gentle ways, the need to heal or tend to our wounds, which I think can be seen through all the ways humanity has been targeted and dragged through direct and secondary trauma under fascist or patriarchal violence. Also, Spica, with her association with Persephone and being the unarmed one, makes me think of children, especially the children taken by violence or surviving genocide, or who are being exploited in child labor in the global south for capitalist profits, or who are being or have been trafficked, like the issue with the Epstein files, for example. There was all this noise and pressure to release the Epstein files in the United States back in September, with some of the survivors who were children when they were trafficked. The survivors holding a press conference when Venus conjoined the South Node. It's like the dragon's tail tried to sweep the Epstein files under the rug, and politicians that are implicated by these very files kept calling for the people to just move on and let it go, and just trying to ignore it and erase it from the collective's awareness. So I wonder if we will see a resurgence in demanding for the release of the Epstein files come when Spica begins to make her first visibility again, or topics around children's rights and women's rights, especially trans and non-binary people's struggles. And in general, just, our visibility coming to the forefront when Spica begins to make first visibility at the end of October. But also Venus currently is in such a favorable position for bringing forth justice.
There's a lot going on, isn't there? There's an awful lot going on where it's really nice that the malefics aren't hitting everything, that they're sort of out of the way for this really lovely, quite bright Venus is co-present ruling the lunation. So and she's in really fine form. She's in that morning star phase. And so she's really come home to be in a lot of power for the lunation. And the moon has just come off a square with Jupiter exalted in Cancer, which is, you know, pointing to Jupiterian issues and the fact that it's going to be making a trine with big water trine coming up soon as well, isn't there?
Yeah, the grand water trine peaks around a week after the new moon or around the first quarter moon at the end of October. Mars and Saturn will reach 25 degrees and Jupiter will be at 24 degrees, which is also interesting because 25 degrees Scorpio is the degree that Mars made its solar conjunction or cazimi back in November 2023, which was the start of the current Mars Sonata cycle. And Mars is now nearing the end of its cycle, and it will conjoin the sun to start a new cycle in early January. And Venus will also be cazimi at the same time, so that will be pretty significant. Um, I have a feeling that this grand water trine at 24, 25 degrees of the water signs will be connected to the Mars and Venus cazimi in January. Like events happening now will be tied to those dates in 2026. Also, some of the medieval Persian delineations for when Jupiter trines Saturn are really interesting. And I've been reflecting on this since September, but around the topic of propaganda. Abu Mashar said that when Jupiter is trine or sextile to Saturn, it would indicate the appearance of propagandists, but also of prophecy coming to light and revelations of secrets. Mars trine Saturn is associated with religious and leadership fraud and confusion of the people because of this fraud, also of theft and the concealment of theft. So I think we can expect these themes to be prevalent as well on a mundane level with the groundwater trine. We've seen propaganda making headlines with Google and TikTok as some examples. And of course, fraud is rampant in the US government, but also in many other countries. So we see more revolutionary movements rising up in response as well, especially with Mercury conjunct Mars and Scorpio. And like you were saying, Venus is in a really good position at this time, and she's actually moving at her fastest speed now, traveling 1 degree 15 arc minutes per day. So she's nearing the midway point of her synodic cycle and will go under the beams of the sun in November. Venus entered Libra on the 13th of October and is averse to both of the malefics through her transit in her cardinal air abode. So we have this new moon lovingly ruled by our heavenly queen on her throne. She'll then ingress Scorpio on November 6th, the day after the full moon in Taurus. She's still visible in the morning sky until November 26th, since she's moving really fast now. She ingresses Sagittarius on the 30th of November and then Capricorn after the solstice in December, before conjoining the sun in early January with Mars. So she is bright and empowered during this new moon before she becomes invisible for about 2.5 months. I feel Venus here on the new moon is generously giving us her resources for working towards justice and reinstating harmony in our personal and collective lives. What I also love about this new moon is that Hekate is associated with the new moon or dark moon phase in general. And we know that Hekate and Persephone have a special relationship in the underworld. So it's as if these deities are conspiring to assist us in our needs for retribution and restoration of balance. And you know, every new moon is a sacred time for endings and for renewal. And for the last few years, I've been devoted to making offerings to Hekate on the evening of the new moon based off of ancestral Hellenic practices or the monthly hearth ceremonies that were performed by our ancestors. So the ancients viewed the new moon or dark moon as the end of the lunar cycle, and this represents the transition from the previous lunar month to the next. So Hekate, the goddess of witchcraft and the in-between of the liminal realms of the spirits of the dead and the crossroads, was venerated on the evening of the new moon by offering her a meal at the crossroads near the home, as well as at the shrine at the gate of the family property. The family would also perform rituals of penance to release past deeds or to make right between relatives or to propitiate Hekate to bring retribution for wrongs and injustices. She was considered to be roaming the earth the night of the new moon, along with the intranquil spirits, and by propitiating them, it was said she could bring justice and retribution. So what's interesting is that this new moon is leading us into the holy days of Samhain, Halloween, the Day of the Dead, and Venus is also there to accompany us with a sweetness to bring some sort of resolution or balm to help us address the more challenging moments that are now arising. And in Libra, she's really bringing us this balance, or at least a commitment to finding balance in the midst of the chaos. So she's nicely supporting the moon here.
It feels like the moon has had a kiss from both the benefics, even in a square with Jupiter. It's still this
Yeah.
contact with the benefics, and then the fact that her ruler now, Venus, it's really feeling like there's something that is being restored, peace restored on some level, justice restored on some level, in the kind of Venusian principle of that, because Venus is very associated with justice, not just with
Yeah.
beauty and pleasure. Libra Venus is very associated with justice, as you know. So it's feeling like Venus is able to really get out and be powerful now, because she has had a bit of a rough time lately, not just because she was moving through Virgo in her fall, but because she was in contact going over that south node, which was
Mhm.
really diminishing, good Venus things, and then going opposite Saturn, and that can feel like the cold wind blowing through you. That can be quite an icy sort of contact for Venus. So it felt like that was a bit harsh for a minute there. And then with Venus's ingress and being prepared for this lunation, it feels like a real turning point as we move into the darkness, because this last decan of Libra is so associated with that, like you're saying, that it's kind of that Halloween comes early, the Day of the Dead. Samhain is around those final degrees of Libra as there's the turn into Scorpio. So it's really interesting that the moon has come through and then it hits this 28 degrees, which is it's in Jupiter's decan. It's an area of Libra where Jupiter has a kind of say in things, but in
Mhm.
the Egyptian terms are Marsi. And it's those
Mhm.
any of those last couple of degrees of a sign, they're either got Saturn or Mars prevailing a bit and defining things like this is the end of the matter. This is a kind of the dying out of Libra before we go into Scorpio. And it's going to be a very different experience for the moon to fall into Scorpio and
Yeah.
starts to make the next planet it meets is Mars in Scorpio. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because in the days following the new moon, when she's waxing, we'll be able to see Luna applying to Mars and Mercury in the evening sky after sunset. And that's going to activate the groundwater trine because when Luna touches Mars, she'll be translating the light from the spheres of Saturn and Jupiter as well. And I love what you said about the third decan of Libra because one of the ideas we were bouncing off of each other is how this decan is associated with the goddess Nemesis, and the sign itself of Libra was associated with the goddess Themist's divine scales of justice. So we have these really strong correlations with these pre-Olympian deities that were responsible for bringing order to chaos and restoring balance. So I want to emphasize how this lunation is a potent time for performing ritual justice magic and appeasing these justice deities, for bringing justice in an unjust world. And this would be a useful time, I feel, for making offerings and doing rituals, petitioning for rightness to be restored, and not just on a collective, but also personal level too. And I love this decan because of that.
Yeah, there's a lot to do with right relationship in that decan. It's, isn't it? It's a lot to do with. It's kind of on a broader scale too. It's both personal but impersonal in a kind of collective sense, because it's Jupiter. It's including the all. It's bringing in
Yeah,
others in order to restore peace. So there's it's such an interesting place in the zodiac, because there's so much going on. It can feel like there's a sort of a swirling of chaos around these kind of points in the decan. And certainly, as someone who has their sun there, I can I just certainly feel this kind of constant adapting and movement of different forces, and that life is always kind of requiring something like a somewhat of a tightrope kind of walk. Maybe many of us feel like that in this world that we're in, but it's certainly, I do love that you were talking about Hekate as well as Persephone, because they're very linked figures, and they
yeah.
feel very potent in that particular area of the zodiac to me. So
Hmm.
and they are
Yeah,
both figures that can move freely between the underworld and the upper world, which is kind of the embodiment of Libra, with the darkness and the light and the balancing of those forces of chaos and order. So, yeah.
definitely. The theme around balance between chaos and order and justice and injustice are really loud with this lunation.
And, it's also in that Via Combusta, the fiery way, the road that sort of is said to run between 15 degrees Libra and 15 degrees of Scorpio, that's considered a place of challenges and
Mhm.
difficulties at times. And, we probably think of that because I think it was Ptolemy who said that it's really due to the fact that both of the luminaries, the lights are in fall there. So the sun
Mm.
is in fall in Libra and the moon is in fall in Scorpio. So it's really right
Yeah,
there. That lunation, that new moon is right there, kind of in the middle of the burning road, nearly close to the middle. And that is that sort of Samhain point, that Day of the Dead, where something is really some kind of sword of justice is almost, raised for I would say something to do with women, something to do with the vulnerable,
yeah,
and some kind of restorative justice, because it's also Libra is associated with it. I mean, Libra, the sword of justice, is very much an emblem of Libra. It's also
yeah,
associated with the Furies, the
yeah,
Erinyes, uh, and so, those who would dispense their justice. And so, there's a number of figures here that it's associated with, that are linked with those kinds of exacting of justice, and not just punishment, but it's really focusing on a number of both Saturnian and Venusian elements that are about preserving and ensuring that there is a right relationship and connection between others, so that when we do go into that period of long darkness, that is
mhm,
symbolically, the setting of the sun with Libra going into the dark of the year, we're sort of carrying over these higher sort of values or truths that will last beyond the wind, beyond those dark months, and so that we'll get to the other end having some sort of something preserved, something intact, that isn't about dissolution and decay, which, that really is those darker winter months. So yeah,
yeah,
there feels like this lunation is, it's a it's starting to feel a sense of urgency in those final degrees. There's something that has to occur, and it does have the support of the benefic there, Venus herself, wanting this and being able to maybe carry it out in some way.
Exactly. Yeah. And I love that the balsamic moon conjunction with Venus in Libra right before the new moon will give us this omen of commitment to the restoration of balance from, as you said, this urgency and a commitment to bringing forth justice, almost as if they're making this oath to each other, and the new moon coming in, finalizing that oath. It will at least be beautiful to look at in the early morning hours on the day before the new moon. Venus later will reach 28 degrees Libra on the full moon in Taurus, tying events from the new moon at 28 Libra. So she reaches that new moon degree finally in a couple weeks following the new moon, when she is full. So we'll have these two lunations, the new moon in Libra and then the full moon in Taurus, ruled by a highly dignified and unafflicted Venus before the new moon in Scorpio next month. And then Venus's period of invisibility. And again, reiterating themes of finding balance in the midst of chaos, right? And another thing I like to consider is the plant sympathies with each lunation for making spiritual baths or using in ritual workings. And Libra has sympathies with these Venusian plants that are being harvested around this time, like pomegranates, olives, and roses, as a couple examples or a few examples. And I have a short video essay going over some of the magical plant allies for the new moon, which I'll link to this video too for anyone who's interested in these. I'm feeling called to do rituals with roses, like a rose petal bath or anointing the body with infused oils, because I think this will be a great way to nourish ourselves.
Definitely. I love that. Yeah, because it's, in fact, most of the every new moon, during the dark moon, I create a kind of bath salt, some bath salts, a particular recipe that
Yeah,
speaks to the herbs for those signs. And so
yeah,
this particular lunation coming up through that dark moon period, I'll be using Celtic sea salt and Epsom salts
nice.
with rose petals and other herbs and oils that are very much about that kind
Yeah.
of Venusian practice. So it can actually be really powerful cleansing practice to just reset, can't it? Right at that sort of new moon period, those cleansing
Hmm.
baths can release a lot of
Yeah.
old, dead, spent energy, as well as bring in the value of that moon and what it's speaking to and the energies that it contains.
Yeah, and we almost forgot to mention how there are these comets accompanying the new moon, and two of them are reaching their closest approach to Earth around the new moon, bringing this ominous quality to that sense of urgency you mentioned earlier. Like, we're living through really dystopian times, and life doesn't necessarily get easier, but we become more capable in carrying our light through the darkness, but also more determined in restoring some form of order in chaos. Like, these themes of bringing balance by finding our center despite whatever is arising become possible when we take care of each other. And we can only take care of each other when we take care of ourselves. And I don't feel we need to strive towards utopia either, but we have the power to still create a better world. And the new moon is reminding us that despite the chaos encircling us, we can still dream and aspire to create a better world, a more humane and just world.
Definitely. And to dream of that, I think it's Charles Eisenstein that talks about a more beautiful world. We can actually create, it's not necessarily an easier world, like you're saying, but a more beautiful world is possible. And that also, and there's so much just on a really mundane level. There's so much research that consistently backs up this idea that okay, self-care is fundamental. We know the kind of basics of self-care and what's required, but that true self-care can also be to do with our connection with others, and that this is some of the most powerful restorative ways of bringing health to the system is through not isolation, but connecting with others, being there for others, with others. And so Libra is very much able to remind us of that kind of medicine that we can also give
Mhm.
ourselves, that's actually incredibly supportive. So, and that's
Mhm.
one of the things that helps us survive going into the darkness is our connections with
Mhm.
others, our community, and not lip service to community, but staying with even those who have very different views and values to us, that we can actually
Mhm.
try and create a bit of glue, be the kind of glue, so that we
Yeah.
bring more peace to the system and less division. So that's one of the more helpful aspects of Libra. I mean, each sign has its shadow as well, which we're probably even, acutely aware of with Libra. But that is that's part of the gift here with this lunation is we can bring all of this other ability to connect and bring beauty and this kind of higher value of something that is also Saturn's ability to preserve Virgo's harvest, to take the
Mhm.
good, to perfect it, to make it last. And that's why Libra is so serious about decisions, because they know the weight
Mhm.
of decisions, that this is a pivot point. There's so much cardinal energy in this lunation, this picture
Mhm.
that's dominating, and it feels like turning points are being reached here.
We're definitely at a major turning point with 2025, marking the beginning of the second quarter of the 21st century. And this new moon also solidifies the Libra ingress, which marks the sun's descent into the northern hemisphere and its ascent in the southern hemisphere. And I like what you said about community being necessary for our not just collective but personal healing. And this makes me think of how community and communication have the same etymological root meaning, to share between the common or the people, and how communication right now with Mercury conjoining Mars is not paying lip service. It's supporting direct communication and direct action, and people are speaking up and speaking truth to power. In Scorpio, Mercury and Mars are more strategic and sharp-witted, with, of course, potential for clashes from saying things a bit too directly, or our words may be coming across as harsh or severe. Um, it can represent deception as the shadow side of Scorpio too, but I also feel Mercury in Scorpio, especially, can help us get clear on our decisions by going to the root of the intention behind making whatever decisions are needing to be made. Like Libra gets a bad rap in popular astrology for being this indecisive sign. And but I think people miss the point about Libra actually being a very decisive sign, because it represents taking decisions seriously. And so it needs to thoroughly weigh matters, and is actually very considerate and deliberate when it comes to making choices, because it knows that a decision can set off a sequence of events which are rarely reversible. So every decision also takes into account the ripple effects of its possible consequences. Hence Saturn's exaltation, right? So it takes decisions very seriously. And Mercury with Mars in Scorpio at the same time can support making very decisive decisions that will be for taking consistent actions, especially in regards to the topics tied to Jupiter and Saturn, since Mercury and Mars are also applying to the grand water trine at this point. And we have these topics tied to needing clarity, especially with the appearance or increase of propaganda. That's reflected by Jupiter trining Saturn and fraud tied to Mars being in the mix.
No, it's a good point you make too about the propaganda machinery, because I think that it's also potentially one of the excesses of Jupiter in Cancer too, is this that there
Yeah.
is this homeland kind of security sense of, you're kind of with us or against us. So, that's actually been used in the past when, and so it still is obviously. But I was actually just thinking back to the last time it was 2002, 2001, 2002 when Jupiter was in Cancer, and that George Bush actually used that phrase, "You're either with us or against us," when he was
Yeah.
embarking upon war with Iraq. So it's a really
The
interesting,
war on terror, which
the
is,
war on terror, which is so big and so hard
and
to
it's coming up
define.
again.
Yes, and it's
Yeah.
something that it's got a never-ending kind of piece of string, this sort of concept. You can't get around that. You can't divide that into a clear sort of easily contained process. It's just a huge behemoth of an idea. And then we've got this kind of trine with, Jupiter and the malefics, and Neptune going back into Pisces will be,
Hmm.
but it feels like this is part of this, something quite big could happen with those malefics involved too. There's something about that trine that feels quite embiggened. And it is about
Yeah.
finding that balance as well, even though it's the nature of Jupiter. It's a really interesting dynamic that's coming up there. And it feels like the moon was pointing to that as it's about to pass over, that square with Jupiter on its way to being renewed. It's certainly I sort of, looking at charts and sort of wondering, there's kind of the rumblings of potentially martial law there as well.
Yeah.
Sort of trying to find the premise for that by, yeah, there's been a lot of activity in the American government that's pointing
Yeah.
towards an inclination towards that. And so when I even look at sometimes look at this kind of well, not grand trine, but it's a trine, isn't it, between these water planets, and I sort of wonder partially if it's one of the steps towards, and I see, yeah, Jupiter squaring the sun as well. I just kind of wonder how far things are going to go with yeah, things are heading a certain way because we're sort of in the winter season of the world at the moment.
Mm.
If we really kind of even zoom out
Yeah.
further, this is the winter of that, we're in a time of winter, of decay, dissolution, and
Yeah.
disillusion. So
Hmm.
there's still those bright spots in between but there is an overarching kind of sense of feeling like things are disintegrating before they can be uh, before they can regrow, be reseeded and rebirthed on another level. We have to sort of get through this period of, perhaps until 2032, potentially even sort of from after
Yeah,
that.
that's a really great point. And the imagery around the winter on a collective scale, the winter of the world, because it makes me think of like the Aquarian themes, like Pluto being in Aquarius, which is the peak of winter, the height of winter, um and then we have Pluto trining Uranus, and Venus, is currently in that ground air trine, and it will be, separating by the time of this new moon, but still, activated in a way. And um, yeah, that's like a really, really great point. And yeah, I agree with you. And yeah, I feel like the 2030s are are going to be this kind of like major resolution around what's
Mm,
being decided now,
yeah.
and even in the more closer proximity of time, like the decisions that are being made now are going to be affecting us for the next number of months, you know. And so I think it's going to activate a lot of people around um really standing up, you know, and or in some cases it's like there's no other option at this point, you know. And so we have to do something, you know. It's not something just for some group of society to address, you know. I think more and
Mm.
more will have this, you know, collective um recognition,
Yeah.
you know, of
And yeah.
knowing that we each play a part in our society. I think the threats to human rights and to human dignity and to humanity in general
Mm.
are really great at this time.
They are.
Um,
Yeah. It's quite a,
and
it's quite a major sort of existential moment we're going through. It's quite, it's a bit hairy, but it's if it is that winter season and there's kind of that sense of those seasons shift and move. We will be in spring again. It's a
yeah,
matter of, getting through. And then of course there are the layers of there are those within those cycles that thrive at different times. And that's the beauty of astrology and our personal nativities as well, and how the timing just works for individuals. But yeah, it does. I do find it helpful to sort of go, well, okay, this is the season we're in. How can we make this as good as it can be? How can we be kinder? How can we offer something of value that actually is to be of service in some way to make a more beautiful world? It's all possible within that framework, even despite the challenges to, like everything you've said. It's absolutely true. That it's very there's been a lot of erosion going on of a lot of things that we thought we were gaining traction on, um,
mm,
and human rights especially.
yeah,
But
yeah,
the rights of the earth too. I mean, I,
yeah,
I was I was an old Friends of the Earth volunteer back in the 90s or through the
yeah,
90s. So it's kind of like this was also my thing. So I'm kind of, like caring for the earth is something that we can do no matter what we're doing. It's
yeah. She's our mother and
she's our
our
mother.
body, really, you know.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
And she's
Yeah,
awake.
and that's so important. And I think that is like a really important point to end on, or to even like focus on with this new moon, because there is actually a lot of resource here with working with the Libra archetypes, the deities of Libra, of the goddesses of justice, you know. We're going to be entering a period of Mercury retrograde, and Mercury is already kind of like activating this chthonic quality with
Yeah.
its conjunction to Mars. And but when it enters Sagittarius on the 29th, you know, it's like it's going to pose Uranus. So that's going to start to like show some themes around uh, Mercury retrograde. It's going to feel like Mercury's already retrograde. There's probably going to be
Yeah.
tech glitches or some sort of, you know, series of curveballs around technology and communication, and even like, you know, I'm thinking like the banks
Mm.
and resources in general. But I feel like with Mercury preparing to slow down and then retrograde and then make that Kazemi on the next lunation, no, the next new moon, because the next lunation will be the full moon on the 5th, and then we have the
Yeah.
new moon in Scorpio on the 20th in November. And that's going to
Okay.
be the midpoint of the Mercury retrograde. We'll talk more about that when the time comes. Um, but yeah, I really feel like the the celestial deities are guiding us to really focus on what we can do together in
Yeah,
community, and to really
yeah.
make the most of this time, and to connect with our ancestors too, because we're
Mm,
entering this really sacred time of the year where we can renew our vows to our ancestors, and to and our connection to our ancestors. I think it's a really great time for people who haven't um set up an ancestral altar. This is a perfect time
yeah,
to prepare
beautiful.
for that, with the new
Yeah,
moon, because the
great
new
idea.
moon tends to bring in a lot of like new energy, and so we're clearing things out. And so, the
Hmm.
balsamic phase, and then even through the new moon itself, cleaning is really useful, and,
Yeah.
and setting up a set apart space where you can honor your ancestors. And I think the topic of ancestral veneration can be a challenging one for some people who maybe feel disconnected from their families, or
Sure.
they might feel like they don't have any good ancestors. But all of us have challenging ancestors,
Yes,
and
all
all
of
of us
us.
have all of us, and all of us have benevolent ancestors, and it's those
Hmm.
ancestors that are there waiting to work with us, and we have to call them in,
Yes. Yeah.
and feed them, and make
Yeah.
offerings to them. And that whole relationship can be restored through this time of year, which is another part of like the beauty of this new moon.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
it's in the midst of like some challenging transits with the grand water trine and the Mercury-Mars conjunction, but it's leading us into the holy days of
Mm,
ancestral veneration and working with the goddesses of the crossroads, of the underworld, and
yeah.
the goddesses of justice, and I feel
Yeah.
like these goddesses are available to us through every culture, so
Yeah.
in whatever way people
Yeah.
connect, I encourage people to um, really find their link to these divinities, and but especially to the ancestors. I think the ancestors, having like a really grounded connection to the ancestors, they'll link us to the beings that are then
Yeah.
you know in
Yeah.
the hierarchy,
Definitely.
the celestial
Yeah.
hierarchy.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I would also say that this lunation could be also really good for initiating gatherings, like regular gatherings with people or women, but not just women. But it's actually a really nice kind of, like, if you'd ever thought about kind of setting up a group to gather regularly, this is a really nice kind of start to something that you could do and have as a regular thing, to feel like you're connecting with others through the sort of the coming darkness, or for me, through the gathering of the light in the summer, and feeling like we're kind of creating a community that actually could be really a great resource in future. And that, whether that's actual live communities or the community of the ancestors and the dead, the spirits of the dead, like, all of this is reminding us of how we are connected to others, and the importance of those relationships, that they can be really nourishing and supportive.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good time for to focus in our attention for what's important in our lives. And I think that starts with who we are as individuals, where we come from, and we can share that in our communities and connect. And our communities being kind of like this greater extension of our families, so yeah.
Mm. I love that.
Thanks so much for taking the time to talk a bit about this lunation.
Oh,
It's
thank
always
you.
really great to talk with you. Yeah.
Yeah, you too.
And
Thanks for inviting me.
yeah, people can find Antoinette on her website, which I'll link in the caption. and
Yep.
also on Substack. And
Yeah, pomegranateastrology.com. And that's really, I can't remember my Substack, but it's Pomegranate Astrology there. So yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that. And it's just been really lovely chatting with you. It's been really, really great. Love talking astrology with you. It's been so much fun. So thank you.
thank you again. I really enjoyed your company and reflections too. And I hope that those watching or listening enjoyed our conversation as well and got something out of it. Go check out Antoinette's writing and work at Pomegranate Astrology. And make sure to check out my video on the magical plant allies for the Libra new moon. Wishing everyone a safe and blessed new moon. Let us know your reflections, your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and share with your friends. And if you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe. Ciao, until next time.